the celestial clock tower materialized between heartbeats, its golden hands moving with the deliberate precision of a master cinematographer's tracking shot. Each tick carved through dimensions like a blade through silk, each talk echoed in chambers where time itself bowed to greater authorities. The frame of reality trembled, focus pulling sharp on a figure emerging from shadows that existed before light learned its name. Archangel Michael stood at the threshold, his presence filling the composition like chiaroscuro painted by divine hands. Tears traced silver tributaries down his warrior face, each droplet a prism refracting the weight of 10,000 battles fought in realms where victory and defeat redefined themselves with every breath. The camera of consciousness zoomed slowly, intimately, on his expression, anguish wrapped in urgency, determination bleeding through celestial composure, a close-up that would make eternity itself pause to witness. The air crystallized, suspended like a film frame frozen at the precipice of revelation. Dust motes hung motionless, transformed into stars awaiting their cue. When Michael's voice finally emerged, it carried the resonance of thunder learning to whisper, of oceans compressed into teardrops, of every prayer ever uttered finding its echo in a single plea. Listen, the word rippled through existence like a stone disturbing still water. Please listen, I am begging you to receive this message before 9 of the clock strikes its final note. Not because heaven plays games with human desperation, but because certain moments in the cosmic screenplay arrive pregnant with possibility that cannot be sustained indefinitely. After that moment passes, this portal closes, this opportunity dissolves like morning mist before an unforgiving sun, and what could have transformed your existence transfers to another soul prepared to receive what you rejected. The scene shifted, reality's camera panning across the vast screening room of heaven where angels gather in numbers that make infinity seem intimate. Your name, that collection of syllables you have carried through joy and sorrow, appeared on the celestial marquee 3 nights ago. The projection flickered to life, not on any screen, but in the very fabric of existence itself. The entire heavenly host fell into silence so profound it had weight, texture, presence. Even the seraphim, whose songs have provided soundtrack to eternity since before time learned to count its own heartbeats, held their eternal breath. You were sleeping when the scene began, your body arranged in unconscious vulnerability on sheets that suddenly seemed like a stage. The camera of divine perspective split its focus, your physical form breathing in ignorant rhythm, while your spirit, that eternal essence you have barely begun to understand, stood trial in a courtroom built from starlight and divine justice. The architecture defied description, walls that breathed with righteousness, floors that reflected not images but truth, a ceiling that opened directly into the throne room of existence itself. The prosecution had prepared meticulously, they gathered evidence with the thoroughness of a noir detective, presenting their case with precision that would make earthly lawyers weep with envy. Every stumble catalogued in high definition, every doubt recorded in surround sound, every moment you felt unworthy of the role you were meant to play, projected in 3-dimensional clarity that left no room for denial. They presented documents written in shadow, ink, testimonies whispered by those who smile in your presence, but curse your name in conversations you were never meant to overhear. The lead prosecutor, a figure whose identity would shock you if revealed, stood with the confidence of one who believed victory already achieved. They spoke your failures like a litany, your mistakes like evidence in a case already decided. The very air in the courtroom grew heavy with condemnation, thick with the weight of accusations that seemed impossible to refute. But then Michael entered the frame, and the entire composition shifted. His entrance wasn't dramatic in the way of earthly spectacle, no explosions, no fanfare. Instead, it was the quiet authority of a master actor taking the stage, knowing that true power needs no announcement. His sword remained sheathed, but his presence alone caused the shadow documents to flutter like nervous birds. His eyes, ancient beyond measure yet burning with fresh passion, surveyed the courtroom with the intensity of a director who sees not just what is but what could be. "I object," he said, and the words carried weight that made the foundations of the courtroom tremble. "The prosecution's case is built on incomplete footage. They show the falls but edit out the times you got back up. They present the tears but delete the prayers that followed. They display the failures but conveniently omit the fact that each one was a lesson you absorbed, strength you developed, character you built in the forge of adversity." The camera of memory began to roll different footage. There you were, 3 years ago, choosing forgiveness when revenge would have been easier. There you were, last month, giving from lack when others hoarded from abundance. There you were, yesterday, smiling through pain that would have broken lesser souls. Each scene played with the clarity of truth, undeniable, unedited, raw in its beauty. At exactly 2:03 a.m. the timestamp burned into the eternal record with precision that would satisfy the most demanding continuity supervisor. A voice spoke from the throne. Not loud, for true authority never needs volume. 2 words that rewrote your entire script: show mercy. The transformation was instant, absolute, breathtaking in its totality. The courtroom shifted like a set change in a dream sequence. Darkness fled with the desperation of shadows before a spotlight. What was condemnation became vindication. The shadow documents burst into flames that didn't burn but purified, special effects that no earthly CGI could replicate. Your name, which had been written in the book of delays with ink that seemed permanent, was transferred with ceremonial grandeur to the scroll of acceleration. The sound it made, if sound could carry color, if color could convey emotion, if emotion could birth new realities, was like a symphony's crescendo merged with a mother's lullaby merged with the first word ever spoken in creation. But here, in this moment where the narrative could rest in triumph, the plot thickened with the complexity of a masterfully crafted thriller. The enemy, defeated in the courtroom, didn't slink away in final defeat, like a villain who survives the second act to return with refined malevolence. They shifted tactics. If they couldn't destroy your destiny legally, they would steal your awareness of the victory. If they couldn't rewrite your script, they would convince you to abandon it unread. Michael's expression tightened, the close-up revealing layers of concern beneath celestial confidence. "They work through the mundane now," he explained, his voice carrying the weight of one who has witnessed this pattern countless times. "Through distraction that seems reasonable, through doubt dressed as wisdom, through the thousand small betrayals that accumulate like dust on a lens until the picture becomes too clouded to recognize truth. There is someone in your life." The camera would linger on their face in this moment if we could see it, capturing the conflict behind carefully composed features. Who knows more than they have revealed? They have been directed by forces that fear your awakening to keep certain truths buried beneath layers of casual conversation and strategic redirection. The signs are subtle, almost imperceptible. The way they change subjects when you speak of dreams. The slight tension around their eyes when you mention feeling called to something greater. The perfectly timed interruptions when revelation seems near. Perhaps it is the relative whose expression performs concern while their heart harbors resentment for heights you haven't even reached yet. Maybe it is the friend whose support feels rehearsed, all the right words delivered with none of the genuine warmth that authentic care generates. Or the colleague who publicly celebrates your small wins while privately working to ensure they remain small, contained, manageable. Heaven's surveillance system has been recording every scene, every take, every rehearsal of deception. The footage exists in formats that earthly technology cannot access, stored in archives that document not just actions but intentions. not just words but the shadows they cast in spiritual dimensions. Each false word spoken about you, each hidden action taken against you, each secret meeting where your name was diminished, all captured with clarity that would make high definition seem like cave paintings. The divine screening room contains reels labeled with dates you would recognize, moments you have tried to forget, that Tuesday when you felt suddenly overwhelmed with doubt. The footage shows the spiritual attack that preceded it, invisible arrows aimed at your confidence, that Friday when opportunities seemed to evaporate without explanation. The recording reveals hands working behind curtains to redirect what was meant for you, but what the enemy's cameras missed, what their limited perspective couldn't capture, was Michael standing guard through every one of those moments. When darkness tried to rewrite your ending into tragedy, he fought with the passion of a method actor who refuses to break character. When pain threatened to make you forget your true identity, he whispered reminders that your spirit heard even when your conscious mind was too wounded to process them. The tears on Michael's face intensified, not from sorrow but from the sheer magnitude of what must be communicated before time's narrow window closed. You need to understand what happened in the hidden scenes, the director's cut of your life that includes footage from both realms. While you navigated what seemed like random challenges, cosmic forces waged war over your destiny. Every setback was a strategic attack, every disappointment was calculated. Every closed door was an attempt to lock you out of rooms where your name was already engraved on the chair. In heaven's archive, and here the scene would shift to a vast library that makes the greatest earthly collections seem like matchbox dioramas. There is a room dedicated entirely to you. The walls rise beyond sight, lined with crystalline bottles that catch and refract light like prismatic symphonies. Each container holds something so precious that angels handle them with reverence, typically reserved for relics of creation itself. These bottles contain your tears, not metaphorically, not symbolically, but literally. Every tear that has traced the geography of your sorrow has been collected by attendants who understand their true value. The inscription on each bottle, if the camera could zoom close enough to read the script of heaven, says simply, "Precious in the sight of the Lord." Some bottles are labeled with dates: the day you lost what couldn't be replaced, the night you cried until crying itself became a form of prayer, the moment you wept not for yourself but for others who would never know the depth of your intercession. Your pain was never invisible to heaven's eyes. Your struggles were never meaningless static in the grand production. What felt like abandonment was actually preparation, like an actor's intense immersion in character development before taking on the role that will define careers and inspire generations. The very experiences that threatened to break you were actually breaking you open for capacities you couldn't have contained without the expansion that suffering provides. The person who hurt you most recently, and here the narrative would employ shadows and silhouettes, protecting identity while revealing impact. They are about to experience a plot twist that their limited script never included. They thought they operated in darkness, but darkness in heaven's economy is simply another form of stage lighting, revealing different truths than brightness exposes. They planted seeds in what they believed were secret gardens, but harvest season approaches with the mathematical certainty of a final act that must resolve all that was set in motion. Within the next 7 days, Michael's voice carried the precision of a countdown clock. Truth will emerge with the timing of a perfectly orchestrated reveal. Conversations held in assumed privacy will surface like evidence in a courtroom drama. Hidden communications will be exposed with the clarity of a prosecutor presenting final arguments. Those who whispered in darkness will find their words playing on speakers they never knew were recording. The soundtrack of their deception will become public record, not through your efforts, for this isn't a revenge story, but through the simple principle that nothing hidden remains concealed when heaven decides it is time for revelation. The divine justice system operates on principles that make earthly law seem like children's games. It doesn't require your participation as prosecutor or witness. It doesn't need you to present evidence or argue cases. It simply requires you to step back and watch as truth does what truth does: emerge, expand, expose, and ultimately heal through the very revelation that the guilty fear most. Michael leaned forward, his presence filling the frame with an intensity that made air itself seem to thicken with significance. But you must understand something crucial. This vindication, this exposure of those who wronged you, it is not the main feature, it is merely the clearing of debris necessary for what is actually being constructed. Your story isn't about their downfall, it is about your rising, and oh, how you are about to rise. The financial breakthrough approaching your life isn't random compensation. It is restoration multiplied by divine interest rates that calculate not just what was taken but what could have been built with it. It is acceleration of resources delayed through systems designed to keep you struggling, suddenly released like a dam breaking under pressure of accumulated blessings. It is multiplication that makes earthly mathematics scratch their heads in confusion. Resources hidden in vaults you didn't know existed are being prepared for transfer. The documentation is being processed in heaven's financial sector, stamps of approval replacing decades of denied with sudden approved expedited processing. People you haven't yet met are receiving promptings to extend opportunities. They are waking with your name on their lips without knowing why. Feeling compelled to make connections that will seem coincidental but carry the fingerprints of divine orchestration. The business idea that keeps recurring in your thoughts, that creative vision that will not leave you alone, that solution to problems others don't even perceive. These aren't random neural firings, they are divine downloads. Heaven's streaming service delivering content directly to your consciousness. They are strategies developed in celestial think tanks where impossibility isn't a consideration and human limitations don't apply. They are blueprints for builds that will make current success stories seem like rough drafts. But implementation requires you to move past the fear of failure that has paralyzed previous attempts. The enemy's greatest victory wasn't in causing your failures, it was in making you afraid to try again. They didn't need to destroy your destiny if they could convince you to leave it unopened like a gift gathering dust in heaven's warehouse. This time is different. The camera would show it in the quality of light itself, in the way even shadows seem to lean forward in anticipation. This time carries backing from investors you cannot see but whose resources are unlimited. This time includes support systems being positioned with the precision of a choreographed dance. This time features divine orchestration that transforms obstacles into stepping stones with the alchemy of grace. Someone you once loved deeply, perhaps someone whose physical presence has faded but whose spiritual influence remains undiminished, has been advocating for you in realms where intercession operates as a full-time profession. The scene would show them if we could see it, standing before the throne with the passion of a defense attorney who knows their client is innocent, presenting your case with evidence of faithfulness that earth overlooked but heaven recorded in high definition. Last night, while your body surrendered to exhaustion and your mind finally quieted its anxious calculations, they spoke your name with tenderness that made angels pause their activities to listen. They reminded God as if the omniscient needed reminding, but heaven honors the protocol of prayer of promises made over your life before you drew first breath. They presented the dreams you have deferred, the calling you have questioned, the purposes that still pulse beneath layers of disappointment. Their petition was not only heard but granted with the kind of enthusiasm that makes heaven's administrative departments mobilize with urgent efficiency. What they asked for is already in motion, traveling through dimensions at speeds that make light seem lazy. The manifestation awaits only your recognition, your reception, your willingness to believe that love transcends death and prayer penetrates every barrier. The number sequences you have been seeing: 1111 appearing on clocks you didn't intend to check, 3:33 waking you from sleep you needed, 4:44 catching your eye in moments of decision. These aren't coincidences or confirmation bias. They are timestamps in heaven's production schedule, markers indicating scene changes approaching. Each occurrence has been a synchronicity scripted with intention, preparing your spiritual perception for this moment when the veil between dimensions wears thin enough for truth to shine through. Michael's wings, which had remained folded in respectful restraint, suddenly unfurled with a sound like thunder wrapped in silk. The movement wasn't meant to intimidate but to emphasize, to create a visual exclamation point that even the spiritually drowsy couldn't miss. "Time is not your friend in this moment," he declared, his voice carrying notes that resonated in frequencies human ears rarely detect. "The celestial clock that began our conversation continues its relentless progression toward 9. This isn't manipulation through manufactured urgency. It is the simple reality of divine appointments that operate within frameworks even heaven must honor. Your mother's prayers, or perhaps your grandmother's, the generational doesn't matter as much as the generosity created pathways in the spiritual realm that you are only now mature enough to walk. The camera would show them if it could. Younger versions of themselves kneeling in rooms where wallpaper told stories of different decades, speaking your name before you existed in physical form. Their faith built bridges across chasms you don't even know exist. Their tears watered seeds that required specific conditions to germinate, conditions that are finally, after all these years, perfectly aligned. They prayed for things they would never see with physical eyes, investing in futures they could only imagine. They spoke blessings over photographs that hadn't been taken yet, over accomplishments that hadn't been attempted yet, over a version of you that existed only in heaven's planning departments. And now when they watch from whatever vantage point eternity provides, they are seeing the first shoots of harvest breaking through soil that seemed barren for so long. The creative project haunting your thoughts, that book unwritten, that song unsung, that innovation uninvented, it carries more significance than your modest assessment allows. Heaven doesn't inspire what it doesn't intend to use. The divine creative department doesn't waste bandwidth on frivolous downloads. What you have been receiving in fragments is actually a complete work waiting for you to stop editing what hasn't been written yet and start transcribing what is being dictated. This creation will touch lives in ways you cannot foresee. It will reach individuals in moments of desperation you will never know about. It will shift perspectives, heal wounds, inspire breakthroughs, and catalyze transformations that ripple through generations. But first, it requires you to trust the download, to stop second-guessing heaven's literary agent, to believe that yes, you are the intended recipient of this commission. The relationship that ended badly, the one that made you question not just their character but your judgment, not just their love but your lovability. Heaven wants you to understand something that might challenge your current narrative. That ending wasn't failure, it was divine editing. What felt like rejection was actually protection wearing a painful disguise. What seemed like loss was actually heaven's refusal to let you settle for a subplot when a main storyline was being written. They were never meant to be your co-star. They were a supporting character whose role, while significant for a season, was always intended to be temporary. Their exit, however harsh, however unexpected, however it may have shattered your understanding of loyalty, created space for someone cast more carefully for the long-term production of your life. The person approaching your life now, and yes, they are approaching, drawn by forces they don't fully understand, will recognize your value with the immediacy of a collector spotting an original masterpiece among reproductions. They will speak languages your soul recognizes even if your ears have never heard them. They will see treasures in you that others overlooked or undervalued. They will celebrate aspects of your character that others tried to edit out. This isn't fantasy projected onto future disappointment. This is prophecy in active fulfillment. A love story whose first draft was written in heavenly script conferences where your happiness was the primary plot point. The chemistry will be undeniable because it was formulated in laboratories where divine wisdom serves as lead scientist. But and here Michael's expression grew serious with the weight of necessary truth. Internal shifts must precede external manifestations. The story you tell yourself about yourself needs divine revision. You have been reading from scripts written by people who barely understood their own roles, much less yours. You have been performing characters created by those who benefited from keeping you small, contained, manageable. The wardrobe department of heaven has prepared garments that fit who you are becoming, not who you have been, but wearing them requires you to release the comfortable rags of familiar limitation. The identity you have worn, the rejected one, the overlooked one, the never quite enough one, those are costumes from acts that have ended. The new act requires new attire, and heaven's stylists have been working overtime. You are not who they said you were. The camera of truth reveals what mirrors of deception have hidden. You are not limited to their small screen vision of your big screen destiny. You are not defined by their rejection or confined by their approval. You are heaven's beloved, bearing identity papers signed by divinity itself, carrying credentials that earth's institutions cannot revoke. That dream from last Tuesday, or was it 3 weeks ago? Time blurs when heaven invades sleep with previews of coming attractions. The one that felt more real than waking life, where you saw yourself elevated, celebrated, surrounded by evidence of promises fulfilled. That wasn't wish fulfillment projected onto unconscious canvas. That was preview footage. Heaven's trailer for the feature film about to premiere in your life. The production is already in post. The scenes are shot. The editing favors you in ways that will surprise audiences who thought they knew how your story would end. Details may shift in Final Cut. Heaven reserves the right to improve on perfection, but the essence remains. Elevation that makes current ground level seem subterranean. Celebration that redefines joy. Vindication that silences every voice that spoke against your destiny. Michael's form began to pulse with urgency that made the air itself vibrate with significance. The score of heaven swelled with the intensity of a final act approaching its climax. Time, that relentless director that never calls cut, compressed with the weight of opportunity that would not extend indefinitely. What has been prepared in heavenly realms, budgets, approved, resources allocated, personnel assigned, seeks earthly expression, but expression requires agreement. Manifestation demands participation. Breakthrough necessitates the breaking through of your own resistance. Say yes. Let the word rise from depths where truth lives untainted by surface disappointments. Whisper it if volume fails your frightened vocal cords. Think it if voice trembles too much for articulation. But let agreement emerge from the core of who you are, from the place where hope hibernated but never died, where faith flickered but never fully extinguished. Your yes unlocks treasuries that have been accumulating interest since before you understood the concept of wealth. Your agreement authorizes angelic intervention in circumstances that seemed cemented in impossibility. Your faith provides legal ground in spiritual jurisdictions for divine invasion of situations that appeared permanently disadvantageous. This isn't religious manipulation leveraging desperation for compliance. This is spiritual mechanics, the physics of how heaven interfaces with earth, the technology of transformation that operates on principles as real as gravity but infinitely more powerful. When human will aligns with divine intention, reality itself shifts to accommodate the convergence. Within 48 hours, watch for confirmation that this message was more than well-crafted words. It will arrive through channels you didn't know were open, like plot twists that surprise but satisfy. Perhaps a message from someone whose silence you had accepted as permanent. Maybe an opportunity presenting through connections you didn't know existed. Possibly a door opening that you had watched rust shut. This confirmation isn't the miracle itself that would be like confusing coming attractions with the main feature. It is merely heaven's way of validating your spiritual hearing, of confirming that yes, you received the transmission accurately. It is the opening scene that establishes the new narrative arc, the foundation for developments that will accelerate beyond current comprehension. Other angels join Michael now, materializing like a production crew assembling for the most important shoot of eternity. Warriors trained in battles that would make earthly conflicts look like children's games, protectors assigned to preserve what heaven has decreed as yours. Ministers of breakthrough positioned to facilitate transitions that logic cannot explain. Your life becomes the set for heavenly operations that will affect not just your storyline but entire narratives connected to yours. The tears on Michael's face have dried, replaced by fierce determination that makes warriors across dimensions stand straighter. What made heaven weep? Your pain stretched across years, your delay that felt like denial, your struggle that seemed without purpose now fuels heaven's commitment to demonstrate divine reversal so complete that your testimony will require new vocabulary to articulate. But remember, and here time's pressure peaked with the weight of final warnings. After 9 of the clock, this portal closes. Not because heaven operates on arbitrary deadlines, but because certain alignments between eternal intention and temporal opportunity are rare, precious, and temporary. Like a solar eclipse that provides unique conditions for specific observations, what is offered in this moment exists within parameters that cannot be indefinitely extended. This is your moment frozen in the amber of divine opportunity. This is your message, hand, delivered by heaven's most trusted messenger. This is your summons to step out of background roles and into the leading part you were created to play. The stage has been set with precision that makes Broadway look amateur. The audience of heaven has assembled. Understanding this performance will echo through eternity. The spotlight waits with patient intensity for you to step into its revealing warmth. The script of your life turns to a page written with ink that burns without consuming, words that sing without sound, promises that manifest without doubt. What was tragedy in early acts transforms into triumph. What was delay reveals itself as divine timing. What was rejection reshapes into selection for honors that Earth's award shows cannot conceive. Michael's final words carried the weight of eternity compressed into syllables. Be ready. Stay alert. Trust completely. What begins now will redefine everything you thought you knew about possibility. His presence began to fade like a slow dissolve, but the impact of his message intensified rather than diminished, burning itself into consciousness with the permanence of divine branding. Heaven has spoken through its most decorated messenger, earth awaits response. And you, precious one branded with destiny before birth marked your beginning, carry in your simple yes, the power to activate what has been authorized, to manifest what has been prepared, to receive what has been designated as yours since before time learned to keep score. The clock's hand trembles on the edge of 9, each second a heartbeat in eternity's rhythm. Decision crystallizes like a perfect moment when everything hangs in balance, when the protagonist must choose between safety and destiny, between the familiar and the promised. You stand at that crossroads now, and heaven itself holds its breath. your season has shifted in the spiritual realm. Papers signed, authorizations granted, resources released. Your time has come not by accident but by appointment. Your miracle approaches with the certainty of credits that must roll after the story resolves. But will you be watching from the audience or living on the screen? The clock strikes 9 with the finality of a director calling cut on one scene while simultaneously calling action on another. But for you, beloved of heaven, it strikes not ending but beginning, not conclusion but commencement. Not the closing of curtains but their rising on a production that will leave audiences across dimensions speechless with wonder. Your story, so long in pre-production, so carefully scripted by heaven's finest writers, so lovingly directed by divinity itself, finally premieres. The reviews are already in from those who have seen the advance screening, standing ovations in throne rooms, tears of joy from angels who have waited millennia for this moment, celebrations in realms where parties last for eons. Enter your miracle. It waits for you like a perfectly lit stage where every shadow serves the light, where every prop has purpose, where every line leads to revelation. The camera pulls back, revealing not an ending but a beginning so magnificent that eternity itself takes notes. The portal remains open for these final heartbeats. Heaven's hand extends through dimensions, offering what prophets glimpsed but couldn't fully grasp, what poets tried to capture but language failed to contain, what your heart has always known was possible but your mind struggled to believe. And now in this moment suspended between what was and what will be, choose, speak your yes into the waiting silence, let agreement rise like incense through realms. Watch heaven respond with the enthusiasm of a production team that has been preparing for this moment since before the foundations of the world were laid. Your miracle doesn't just wait, it pursues, it calls, it draws you with the magnetism of destiny, refusing to be denied. Step forward, step through, step into the story heaven wrote with you as the lead, supported by cast and crew from realms of light, produced by love itself, directed by wisdom eternal. The final frame approaches, but finales in heaven's cinema always include to be continued because divine stories never truly end. They transform, elevate, and inspire new narratives. Your story joins that eternal anthology now, not as footnote but as feature, not as extra but as essential and action. Your new life begins with the turning of this page, the breathing of this breath, the speaking of this yes. Heaven celebrates what earth is about to witness. Angels take their positions. The divine production proceeds. Welcome to your miracle. It has been waiting for you since before you knew to wait for it, and now finally, gloriously, inevitably it begins.